Hello, Tyler Bryden here. Hope everything's going well. Recording this January 25th, 2025. What a week it's been. Obviously, a lot of stuff moving around and changing in the world. You can't look past the Trump inauguration, returning as president in the United States of America, and the trickle-down effects, the feeling of that just everywhere in the world. There was Davos this week, and apparently Davos is dead. There's sessions there with no one barely in them. A lot of fear on their side, and even seemingly admitting that their globalist post-national experiment did not work and failed and has now been rejected. So super interesting time. I'm sorry for my hair. I got some stuff to do. I'm all excited. I'm back on the chai, masala chai. I took in some milk out of my life for a couple of weeks there. Monica brought it back in. She wanted some tea. So I'm making tea. I'm all fired up here. And it's in the morning, Saturday, recording this. And man, a lot of stuff that's going on. So first, what are we going to talk about here today? A few things. One, I talk about this DeepSeek AI model that has really taken the world by storm and seemingly has shocked scientists, researchers, people interacting with AI models, creating questions around the dominance of the United States here and this empire that is in building, the NVIDIA, and this idea that we're just going to continually needing to spend massive amounts of money with more chips and more energy and all of these things. So we'll touch on that. Of course, we've got some thoughts on the Trump inauguration there. Executive orders, tons of them. I think the most ever. Got a visit to LA yesterday, which was super interesting. A speech at Davos, which was pretty incredible. More threats to Canada. We got Greenland under siege. Apparently the gig is up. It's not a joke. And this is actually serious. So we've got Trump just in the news cycle constantly all week there. What's crazy among all this, we had the OpenAI Operator release. So this was this agent action taking place and a release in the $200 a month plan. People using that, first reactions to that system and how people are feeling about, okay, the agentic future that we're now in here in 2025. We've got some stuff I just want to talk about, which I thought is really interesting, this idea of meme marketing. There's a guy on Twitter there, Jason Levin, I think I'm saying that right, and this idea memes make millions, and I'm testing this my own way through Speak AI, and so I thought that'd be an interesting thing to talk about. I'll walk through that a little bit, and even structurally and systematically how I'm attacking that problem. A lot of refinement there, not much data for me to prove that that's actually working yet, but interesting overall. And then I'll finish, if I get there, right, if I still got the energy, Canada tariffs, and just another bad week for Canada. And if you don't know, I'm sitting just outside Toronto right now, the epicenter of a lot of it going on. GTA apparently just passed 7 million people, so 300,000 people per year or something, like settling in the area that I'm in. I can tell you from when I first moved to seeing the parks in the summer to where I'm seeing the parks now, packed. All right, so that's what we're going to do. Let's get into it here. First thing here, we've got this DeepSeek company. There's a lot of things going on here. One, which is this model has been released. You can, I believe, interact with the API, but then there's also an open source model with an MIT license, which is pretty incredible. You can look at this. You can see all these benchmarks, these evaluations that people are using for these AI platforms, and apparently in some cases exceeding some of the top models in the world, at least matching or being very high performance in a lot of them. You can see the columns. I think I've condensed it a little bit because I'm on this tablet view that I'm showing you. But the interesting part, and you can start to see this in the reaction online from people who are spending a lot of time in this space, is this is a pretty incredible engineering feat. Apparently some quant trading system in China. There's messaging that this is like a side project, which is crazy. But then there is questions around what's actually happening. The memes, of course, are coming, and we'll talk about that in the meme marketing. But yeah, so this idea that it was only a side project, and for $6 million, it was able to dethrone every AI company. Now, what's really interesting about this is there seems to be some debate on is this some involvement with, say, the Chinese government? Is this some propaganda where they actually have access to these GPU clusters much more than they're sharing? Either way, the outcome is a super valuable thing. I haven't actually been able to take the time to put this into my own environment and interact with the models. So I'm primarily going off what I'm seeing a lot of highly credible people that I've followed for a long time who have had that opportunity say. And basically what we're seeing is same quality, 97% reduction on cost, some great technology that has been released have access to. Now, there are questions around censorship, and this is again that idea of, okay, is the Chinese government part of this? The founder of Scale AI talked about they have access to more GPUs than they're representing. And you can see here in this idea, this meta AI. So this was one of the threads that was released. And I think this is where it starts this conversation. Meta being in panic, Llama 4 already behind in benchmarks. And then obviously there's this massive, budget that's going. I think Zuckerberg just talked about $65 billion that they're investing in, not just all in training and actually standing up these data centers, all of that. But the idea that a Chinese team has achieved this level of performance at such a small cost is actually structurally scary for the economic engine that has been brewing, specifically with a lot of concentration in the United States. And we've got NVIDIA, we've got Micron, we've got AMD, we've got all these companies here who, okay, not all of them have performed equally, but many of them have performed incredibly well and have increased expectations of growth, have signaled that, put that in the projections. And part of it is, okay, we need to continue to sell massive amounts of chips. There's huge demand, and I think that demand is true for increased performance and reaching this level of an artificial intelligence, whether super intelligence, AGI, whatever you want to call it. So then if you can do this truly on a smaller set of chips for a massively reduced budget and then give out that model at an extremely reduced cost, it really starts to threaten that model. And I think that's where some of this concern here is there's just so much money being invested in these companies, in this movement. And it's actually been a narrative that has held up the market and allowed the market to accelerate because truthfully, there wasn't that much going on. And there were a lot of signals that we weren't actually in that good of a spot, but this narrative around AI has really allowed us to continue to put CapEx in, continue to invest, and at least temporarily created this boom in earnings for a concentrated set of companies that have then benefited and held up the stock market, which is pretty crazy. And there's lots of signals flashing about concentration risk right now. The memes are there. Sam spent more on this vehicle than DeepSeek did to train that model that killed OpenAI, getting attention from some of the biggest leaders in the world. We've got Mark Andreessen here talking about this incredible breakthrough that has come. And again, this idea that open source can really have an impact on the current market and the companies in this space. And right now there is a lot of questions around, okay, is this market sustainable? Is the money that's going into these companies, especially I would say these frontier labs, the OpenAI, the Anthropic, and then obviously the investments from these big hypers, Amazon, Google, the Meta, is all of this worth it? And a couple of things that I've seen just from my own experience working at Speak AI is, of course, this idea that the costs keep going down so significantly. I remember when we started, we were more focused on transcription, but we were charging like $6 per hour for transcription. Now, we charge $1.50, but we can go much lower than that based on the customers that we work with. Customers obviously are demanding lower costs. So then how do you continue to grow revenues in the company if the cost profile is shrinking so much? This is a big question that I'm asking. And I think the piece there is, okay, well, usage. And that's what we've seen as, say, a company with almost infinite maybe demand like OpenAI. They keep bringing that cost profile down, but their revenue continue to rise because it allows so much usage of the technology. And such a general purpose technology has a lot of value proposition for that unlimited usage, where if you're a more refined set of use cases of AI, then For us, for example, we are reliant on that company having enough data to feed us, specifically, generally audio, video data that they're capturing through meetings, that they're capturing through research that they're doing or other sources. And if that data isn't large enough, then the usage isn't there, the revenue isn't there, and then the value proposition for the end customer might not be there. So I think there is this potential area where companies that don't fit that general purpose or have infinite demand for usage can run into problems. And then even for these companies that have a huge amount of usage, if open source companies like this continue to just push down these costs and rise the expectations of what's possible for so little money, it's really going to put these companies in a tough position. So I encourage you to check this team out, some of the articles about DeepSeek, who has navigated restrictions on like semiconductor imports. And you can see that in articles that are talking about even ByteDance making huge strides here, that it's possible to compete with really refined engineering and talented people. And this idea of like necessity is the mother of invention. Definitely check this out. Would love to hear what you think. Just an incredible story there. And what a release from DeepSeek that's already changed fundamentally how we're viewing this AI space in just a very short period of time. So let's move on. We've got the Trump inauguration. What the hell is going on there? Obviously, a ton of memes that came out of this. We've seen some of my favorite, the Barron tall, we just keeps getting taller idea. The first thing that you see, there was some great reactions by him and focus on him handling the attention in a way that we haven't necessarily seen before. There's young Barron with, again, a lot of mannerisms of Trump. And man, it was obviously quite a show of people who were at the Trump inauguration. I just listened to the All In podcast where they were all there themselves and they were in the background. So of course we did see these very high profile, what do we got? We got Zuckerberg looking at the boobies, all this stuff. Some of these memes have been already probably beaten to death here, but you had quite a crew there in attendance, tech on full display. And I think some show of like American dominance, American business friendliness. And I love these memes, the gaze detection, that Trump is here and friendly to business. Now, I watched the parts of the inauguration. I was working and doing things, but I had it on the side screen there as I was working on a couple things. I don't know. I guess I'm a fan of JD Vance. I'll say that. And I love his wife, Usha. I think that that's a beautiful couple. I'm a white man. My wife is Indian, originally from India. And so I think that's like something beautiful to me, and maybe something that isn't, I guess, is being highlighted a little bit about how beautiful of a couple it is. But I think it's such an amazing moment in history to see those two up there. I think Trump from the get-go has obviously come in super hot. We saw executive orders. We're happy to see Trump and then David Sachs on that executive order. I'm a big fan, obviously, of All In. And so it was a pretty cool moment to see crypto, the AI czar here, and someone I followed for several years. And frankly, I think has, people use the term red-pilled a lot of people into supporting the Republican Party. And I felt that transition myself, listening from him and listening to All In and being skeptical in some ways of David Sachs to where we are. And I think it doesn't get even more representative of that than if you watch All In and you see where JCal has ended up on this pendulum. It's pretty, crazy what's actually taken place. If I was to have, I guess, any takeaways, just if I was to think for a moment, I'm repeating what someone else said, but was from All In yesterday, David Friedberg, who I have a lot of respect for. He talked about a lot of concern about this idea of Doge and the deficit cutting and all of this stuff, maybe not being as effective as hoped, because there's just so much incentive for these people in power to continue bringing money into their districts or who has nominated for them. And so I think that's a sad thing. I think there is this conflict between the messaging of the people and supporting these people, and then the flash of wealth and the people who are actually at the inauguration. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing. I think it's an interesting thing to watch and see. Again, I'm Canadian, so you might say, why do I even care about this? But this is a global show of force and dominance, and I think U.S. is really gearing up and having a massive impact on the world. It always has, but just Trump again is so damn in your face in the media cycle, and it's almost impossible to ignore. I'm sure some people would like to. I think I'm inspired and interested and fired up for it. I think it makes countries want to do better and want more for their own countries. Again, maybe you don't like the tactics, maybe you don't like some of these executive orders, you don't like the stripping out DEI, or there's only 2 genders and all this stuff. But this person who comes in with a mandate, representing the people, comes in, makes decisive decisions very quickly, even if not liked by everyone. I think that is inspiring and something that we will see more of. And I would say it's interesting here in Canada, just to speak about it for a moment. We have Trudeau step down. We've got these Liberal ministers coming up. Carney and Freeland, I would say, are the 2 leaders there. And no one really expects them to win. There's already so much criticism and skepticism of them. But I would say some of that has also been passed on to Pierre, because now Pierre is getting asked very hard questions. Okay, how do you think about genders? And he had a great moment online with a news reporter talking about that. And again, this isn't really an issue that I care too much about, is someone who I don't know, it's pretty progressive in that side, but like now they're asking, okay, Pierre, are you going to leave the World Health Organization? So all these questions, all these things that Trump is doing that are so, again, decisive and maybe conflicting with how things have operated for so long, are now being questioned and asked about to other leaders of other countries, or even potential leaders like Pierre Poilievre here. Now, the one thing, now this is fresh in my mind, but you had Trump here, I think, at the end of the week, continuing this run up, and we have
going to do immediately, and you will see this
Trump
happen,
and
is to clear out
Mayor
the
Bass
debris.
here.
And we're
contractors, it's going to be 2 years.
If a family,
the people are willing to get a dumpster and do it themselves and clean it out,
and they can.
There's not that much left. It's all incinerated.
That's right.
And it's just going to take a long time if you do. You can do some of it, but a lot of these people, I know that guy right there that's talking. I know my people. You'll be on that thing tonight, throwing the stuff away, and your site will look perfect within 24 hours. And that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to wait around for 7 months till the city hires some demolition contract that's going to charge him $25,000.
Such a crazy exchange here, Mayor Bass. What's interesting is you often see Trump, I guess, in these elements where he's just like speaking to a camera, it's by himself, but then you realize like how willing he is to be combative in a real situation where a lot of people would just back down. And so I thought this was a pretty incredible moment, whether you like him or not, someone who is coming in with the confidence, maybe not giving a crap anymore, and knowing it's his last term, and just had 4 years to stew on this after losing the 2020 election, and just coming in and just being like, no. And I think that is a really fascinating, I would say, exciting thing to see as someone on my own side who I definitely, there's no, maybe when I was younger, I would say this idea, this strain of anarchy, but I just think sometimes we as people just accept things the way they are and are just like unwilling to make change because it seems too radical or uncomfortable. And what I like to see here is that is what's taking place. So I think that's really fascinating overall. The news is not going to stop, and we'll start to see these videos start to emerge, deportations. Obviously, there's been this focus on criminals here. Apparently, just last night, there was a flight rejected. So Trump was sending people back to Mexico, and they rejected that flight. So I think that's a pretty incredible thing. But as you see these videos, you start to say, oh my God, this is serious. You'll start to see border crossings down. There's military out there, but I think we'll start to see some pretty intense videos. We'll obviously see very emotional ones where people are crying and devastated. And I mean, that's a really sad thing, but then we might see these more aggressive, violent ones here. We had this guy, apparently 17-time criminal, yelling, F Trump, Biden. And again, it's probably a pretty happy soundbite for the Trump team there when they see this guy yelling like that. So a lot of controversy over the next few weeks, months, years. this is going to go on. But anyways, congrats to Donald Trump on this week, on a pretty monumental moment in time. And I'm excited in some ways to see a lot of great people around him right now who I have a lot of respect for. You've got RFK, you've got Sachs, Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know where Vivek is, to be honest. You've got some of these all-in crew here, a lot of technologists in there, and that's part of my life. And I can't be a full techno optimist at all times, but I do think technology and also just the people who have run businesses have a lot of ability to sort through that idea of like things are this way, and so we're going to continue in this way, and say no, that's not how we're going to do that. We've got the OpenAI Operator. I am talking about this mostly from assessment online. I would love to say, hey, I've had a ton of time to play around with this research preview, but basically this is that moment of agentic operation. Sometimes their branding and names are interesting. I think operator, I guess it's fine, but whatever. And it is allowing you to, using its own browser, it can look at web pages, it can interact, it can type, it can scroll. Apparently it won't do certain things like form filling and payment cards and all that. I think obviously there's a lot of risk. That's in the end where people will want to go, but there's these guardrails that are required to make that happen. And so there's some limitations there. And I think some of the reaction around it is clunky, nerfed, and these final steps that are important to actually make this full autonomous behavior are not available or not possible right now. So it limits the value and use of the system, but I believe that safeguard rails will be able to put in place and the action will be able to take place. And maybe, for just as an example, okay, it will make a payment or fill in details for a payment as long as it's under $20 or whatever that type of mechanism here is. So starting small, it's available to the pro users. I believe these $200 a month plans. Europe's not getting it. A shout out to Europe with their continued late releases of this technology. It's pretty crazy what's going on there. And then they'll obviously expand it into use. So they did a preview here showing those functions. It's still very consumer focused, which again, I think there's no problem with that. But I think where a lot of people are interested in obviously these more like enterprise use cases. And I'm already seeing LinkedIn sales, agentic behavior, which again raises more concerns. People are already doing that happening through tools like LinkedIn Helper and stuff like that. But if we all know that there's agents cruising around everywhere, real human authentic connection will start to be less visible, more desired. But then there'll just going to be a layer of skepticism wondering, is this true human or is this just agentic behavior that's happening in the background? It's making mistakes. It's a little clunky here. I've seen some people actually come back and say, okay, I don't like this. And then as they've interacted with it more, started to say, I got to play around with it more and see the value here. There's people talking about how good it is for debugging, even your own products. So this, in this case, the guy talks about the actual operator, like auditing the platform, fixed things, fixed issues, figured it out, building open source tools. And I've talked about it in previous videos, this replit system that really allows you to put things in production. So I think that's really fascinating. We've got Greg Eisenberg here, always trying to create some value online. So he's got this like one pager. You can check out that tweet about everything you need to know. And really has brought in a lot of the modalities that OpenAI has been working on for a long time. The vision, obviously text understanding, deep comprehension and context with everything. Does talk about some of the limitations, the CAPTCHAs, the payments and logins, complex interfaces, so much variance across websites and stuff. So that's expected. And then there is an API coming for developers. So I think once that API takes place, I think we're going to see a super significant explosion of it. And this question around OpenAI, are they nerfing another set of companies here? There's all these vertical agents, and can they outperform and beat, say, OpenAI, who's obviously on this horizontal, both consumer all the way up to enterprise layer there. So congrats. Another huge release, another big moment. I actually felt like it did get lost a little bit in the DeepSeek announcement and hype around that, but this is a big moment for AI here. And very quickly, we're going to, I think, see some uptake on this. And here we go. So I was talking earlier about this idea of meme marketing. This guy apparently has used the operator to make memes. So I wanted to touch on this concept. We're switching obviously everyone, I mean, on the internet loves memes, where a lot of time we're just here for the memes. But this idea of like memes as marketing, and I don't know, I'm not going to say he's like the first person to like completely have this concept, but he's definitely been a leader in this idea. Memes make millions. This is the book. He's got this meme marketing tool, Meme Lord Tech. He's got the Elon as a service, and interesting follow. He's pretty on point with all the latest memes, the templates, all of this stuff. And he's in that tech AI tech bro spot that's really perfect, at least for me right now. And maybe not everything speaks to you, but pretty funny guy and interesting. And really the thesis there is, hey, memes make millions of dollars. And if you can make your customer laugh, then you're in a pretty good spot. And obviously, if you can do this some contextual way, just as a couple things that I've seen here, this idea, okay, one, which is I created some meme advertisements here. And what I'm seeing is, okay, they can reach, say, 1,000 people for a much lower cost than a more generic branded image. And so that's great. It's proven to me through numbers that I'm at least seeing that possibility. I think the side effect of that is, again, it makes you laugh. Then there's a positive interaction that you're having with the company. And you can very quickly get across the message of your business. And so I've got this platform. I mean, I didn't build this platform or anything, but I came across this image flip platform. What's really interesting, I was able to structure this into a Google Sheet. I like to operate off this app scripts where I can enrich with OpenAI and all these things. So I've got the title, I've got two sets, image memes, video memes, the name, obviously you've got the URL. I was able to pull all those tabs in. I did my own personal rating there. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. See, okay, maybe that's a little too much. Let's go to 125. So for example, I love the Charlie Always Sunny. I've got the image here, and then I can now go and caption this myself directly by writing into the system, or I can use an API and even pull OpenAI with some context on that image. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to refine this process. Seeing this guy use the operator was pretty inspiring there, because I'm like, it's so close. I'm just still a couple things manually getting my instructions set. So basically I can just drop the meme in, and then I've given it a set of rules and instructions, and it will create that caption for me. Now, they're not perfect. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are not. But then the actual memes themselves are pretty hilarious. So I've got my workflow without speakai.co. Maybe you think that's a good meme. Maybe you don't. I tried to embed the actual company name, which maybe creates some skepticism right away, but pretty interesting. Again, all this created by this image flip platform, both the it makes me laugh, the GIFs and the images there. There you go, explaining my analysis without speakai.co. So maybe you don't think that's perfect, but it gives me a laugh. And so now I've got that being posted. I've got this co-schedule platform now, which is pretty fascinating. I've used this system before for advertising, and there's a ton. There's Buffer and there's all these different things, but I just wanted to highlight a couple things. One, which again, obviously you can sync your social platforms in there. So I got a bunch of things that are queued up, and obviously what's nice when you do these type of ads, they're like evergreen. So the message won't expire, and I can post these at any time and it's still relevant. I've intentionally made them this way, but it's got this really nice platform or system called Requeue. And what that allows me to do is take a drop and classify these, for example, this meme marketing. And what it's going to do is look for specific instances in the calendar where there's nothing scheduled, and it will automatically then republish that content. And you can set limits, like this message can only go out twice a month. You obviously don't want to just keep posting out the same things over and over again, but basically what you have is like a one-time creation. I spent a bit too much time doing it manually and getting this instructions and things set up, but overall I've now got a set of dozens and dozens of these memes that are semi-funny, semi-impactful, related to the platform. Obviously there's the hashtags there to try to help them rank, and they're just being scheduled and published out and then being added to this Requeue and posted. So I think this is a really fascinating idea that we're seeing, this memes make millions. And I'm running that experiment here right now, seeing what that looks like. It's definitely not perfect. Oh, we got Chloe. She's got something going on. I've only got also 257 followers there on Speak. So I don't think it's going to, be maybe as impactful. And I'm not exploding in views or anything. I do think there's a lot of ideas around like engagement actually having to happen on, say, Twitter to make make it possible. But that's performing, I would say, better than my normal view. It gives you a laugh, gives you some context, allows you to feel the pain point of the platform, and is a fascinating little experiment. So I'll keep you updated on this here, see if this leads to anything. I've got some UTM tags. So like, are people actually clicking on this? Is anyone actually converting more than just getting some, views and maybe making some people laugh? Like, does this actually convert into any business? So that's obviously a big outstanding question there. But I thought there's something fascinating to highlight. So you got image flip there. You can just write in the caption like me when my wife asks what I've been doing all day, and just automatically populates. You can generate that. I've got an account there, and it will put the image flip watermark in the end if you don't have a premium account there, but who really cares? The one thing I have found is some of these images are super small, so you need to upscale them to make it work, and there's a separate tool that you can do. So there's a couple of steps in this process, but if you can get that down refined, you can automatically generate high quality, meaningful, funny memes that are related to the business and publish them at scale. And so I'm going to continuing to work on this process there. And what I like about even this, now some people say, hey, these are old memes, but some of these have standed the test of time. And you could say, what are the top ones in the last 30 days? Or what are the top new memes? You can grab them. And even what I've been doing is just like saving ones as I see them and I get a good laugh, the new ones. So lots of ones this week were, well, probably don't want to have the Nazi Elon. I'm not going to go into that, but you've got the new Squid Games, and there was a bunch of ones that are Baron and stuff from the inauguration that have become these meme formats. So I like how it goes. Any thoughts? Would love to hear. And woohoo, we've been going, we've been rolling. I don't think I stopped talking. I don't know how any of you can listen to this, but it allows me to get my thoughts out and maybe gives you some insight into a crazy person. So let's jump in. I think this is the last topic here for me today. Hard to avoid. I jump from technology to politics to technology to meme marketing and then back to politics. So there was all this stuff when Trump was originally coming in, these jokes about Canada becoming the 51st state. We got the Governor Trudeau jokes. And what we're seeing now is February 1st. So we're T-minus 7-8 days away on possibly 25% tariffs being put on Canada. And what we're seeing is Trump talking about loving seeing Canada become a 51st state. And even speaking to that Davos presentation, I don't know, call it a presentation, but the message that he had is basically, you don't do what we want you to do, we tariff you. And that's the same thing that Canada. So it's like become a state or tariff. That's a pretty stark message that's obviously coming from Trump. And as a Canadian, as a technologist, as an entrepreneur, as someone with a lot of affinity towards the US, I am really conflicted on this whole thing because growing up, I've talked about this before, this proud love of being a Canadian here, I think was really meaningful to me. And in so many ways, Canada at least felt like almost in some ways a better country. Obviously not the economic force, but at some points the idea of universal free healthcare being really valuable, the spirit of the Canadian people and how the politeness and the love, the community that was here, and this idea that both a prosperous country with business development, but also these better social safety nets that made it a great country. And I think over the last 10 years, unfortunately, we've seen a lot of that degrade. And I've talked about this before, but I think one of the saddest things for me here is like the degradation, obviously, of the country, objectively, statistically, through performance and economics and all this. But I also just think subjectively of the pride of Canadians. And I find when pride is destroyed, so much ambition, and even just going to the park and not littering and all these incredible things that come from pride and just wanting to be proud of where you live and your home, and all these things are just relegated to the sidelines as people become more self-promoting because it's out of a requirement, because things have gotten so expensive and all of this stuff. So I think that's a really sad thing. I think the reality here, you cannot have a business that is just reliant on one customer. That's not a good business. And really, Canada has a lot of reliance on the United States. There's a lot of leverage that they have now. There's talks about retaliation here with oil and electricity and all these things. And I don't understand the full mechanisms of it. But man, Canada here is now starting to get in a little bit of panic. When there's some skepticism, Trump talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in the deficit, It was $54 billion. That's the community note. And without energy trade, the U.S. would have a trade surplus. So it's false and exaggerated, but he's doing what he wants to do. And he's obviously got something on his mind about Canada. I'm like, how the hell would this work? Canada in general is such a large country, such a rich country in terms of resources. Obviously, we don't unlock those resources probably the right way. And I think there is a lot of credence to protecting lands that I have a lot of belief in, but at the same time, there's this necessary understanding or need to be self-sufficient and sustainable. And if resources are and other exports aren't, then you have a responsibility and a requirement to access those things, because that's what keeps you self-sufficient and allowing you to have some control over your own future. When you have no control, when you have no independence, then it's very easy for someone to come and say, hey, we want to do this, and we have full leverage and control over you. That's what is happening here right now. Trump, not just talking about this before being inaugurated, now talking about this on Davos on a world stage, then that brings up more questions from reporters, and so he's addressing it. And I think it is a very difficult and interesting time. At Table Salt, this was actually back in December, but talking about what would this do for unemployment, what would this do to the GDP, and overall, all signs are not pointing to a good thing. And I think that's something, as they went down to meet Trump, even this idea of like operating from strength, it's like, hey, if you do this to us, you're going to destroy the country. Well, what does a businessman do? If they can destroy, say, a competitor and buy that competitor for pennies on the dollar, that's a pretty valuable tactic and something to do. And so I think Canada is in a very difficult place right now. I think as Canadians, we're just bracing. My father and his wife work in the vehicle industry. We've already lost 1,500 jobs from going back to the U.S. after they took billions of dollars from Canada. We have Amazon leaving Quebec. There is a lot of signals going on that Canada, through the last decade, has not done a good enough job to protect their selves, leading to this moment in time. And within a few weeks, we're going to see an acceleration of the fear, acceleration of some clarity. But I just don't think we fully understand the execution of these tariffs actually going live and what that means for us. There's theories, but then there's the reality if that takes place. So we got Canadians running ads on Fox News talking about the importance of trading partners. We got fear around the dollar, and it's a scary time. And I think people would say, well, a lot of us in Canada supported Trump going into power, so that's your fault for even wanting that, which I can definitely see the credence in that argument. But is the temporary pain going to be better for us as Canadians in the end, the smarten up moment? Because the original talk was around just like protecting the border better and not allowing people coming in and fentanyl coming in across the Canadian border. But now this idea of the American country leading by example and focusing on economic success, protecting their own countries, maybe it's going to be a very rough moment in the short term, but is a better net movement than just continuing the status quo. I think that's a question in the air. I'm not answering that question or saying yes or no, but just something fascinating to think about. I'm out of gas here. Appreciate anyone who listened and joined in. This has been another week observing, philosophizing, thinking, talking, all the stuff that's going on in the world. I hope you enjoyed and got something out of this video. If you didn't, I still love you. And if you did, I love you even more. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.